Hello, everyone. I'm here to participate with you in the Global Education Academy of the School of Education at the University of Kansas's virtual summer conference. The topic is Strategies for Educational Improvement, Thriving in a New World. I'm Neal Kingston. I'm a University Distinguished Professor of Educational Psychology, and I focus on assessment. And I have with me today
I'm Val Shute. I'm an endowed professor in the Ed Psych and Learning Systems Department at Florida State University.
And we're going to be talking about the future of assessment under two different scenarios, the COVID and post-COVID world. So we all had a very interesting spring semester. It came on us unexpected. We did what we had to do. State assessments for accountability were canceled in every state. Teachers had to figure out how they were going to continue teaching and assessing students. And now there's a little bit more time to think about what could and should be done. And so I want to talk a little bit about that first, and then go to the future. What lessons are we learning, and where can we go from there? So Val, I imagine this is something that you've been thinking about, if not your whole career, certainly an awful lot. What do you think teachers should do?
Well, I have some definite views on testing. And I think that this vision that I've been formulating and recently wrote up about a couple years ago, so been thinking about it for the last 10 years, which coincides with my getting free rein to go forward with the stealth assessment ideas. And I see, I'm going to go ahead and read a couple of sentences that I wrote in a publication that describes the vision of what I'm going to be talking about. So, imagine an educational system in which high-stakes tests are no longer the dominant means to drive educational reforms through accountability systems. Instead, students would progress through their school years engaged in all sorts of different learning contexts, all of which capture and measure growth in valuable cognitive and non-cognitive skills. This information would then be used to further enhance student learning. And the way that it works is in our complex interconnected digital world, we're learning constantly and we're producing, just countless digital footsteps everywhere we go. And the vision doesn't refer to simply administering assessments more frequently, like each day or each week, but instead this is a continual collection of data as students are interacting with these digital environments, both inside and outside of school. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of how I've been envisioning a world without tests. But it's so much better, this is a situation where you don't have kids, especially in a COVID world, that are handicapped by, not only may they have test anxiety, they may not have the resources. If you're doing tests, online, who's to say that, kids aren't cheating or, seeking resources. So this alternative idea is actually using extant data that are being produced as kids are interacting all over the place in any kind of learning environment, social media, whatever. Data are being pulled out from those data streams, and then inferences are made on the basis of what they say and what they do back to claims about what they know and don't know and to what degree.
I knew that when we agreed to talk to each other about this as part of the conference, that this was not going to be a debate, that there's substantial overlap in how we think of the future of testing.
Yeah.
You frame it and focus on some slightly different aspects of it, but totally consistent with my own view. My view has long been, at least for the last 10 years also, has long been to blur the distinction between instruction and assessment. A lot of the work that I have done, as opposed to stealth assessment, the way you have gathered all these different sources of data, have been planned activities to gather all these different sources of data. But at their heart, I think there's the same thing, and certainly at least the same goals that are associated. But what might this look like this fall? So we don't have time to continue plans of research that both of us are working on right now on our own to help teachers in 3 months or 2 months. And any advice for what they ought to be doing if, let's say, the schools wind up closed again? Let's take the worst case scenario as a starting point.
Another thing, this isn't necessarily come the fall. This is something that has come right now on my doorstep, which is I have a number of different grants that are all collecting data right now, or should have been. And the way we usually do it is we have, some game, and we go into schools and we either use their equipment or we bring our own set of 25 different Surface Pros, or, some collection, and we collect our data across, 3 to 5 days or whatever. Right now, the studies that we're doing are looking at, should we provide the supports before or after they play a level? Before, the argument is, it'll serve as an advanced organizer where they're getting the concept. Oh, this is what you're going to be learning about, or you're going to be practicing in the next series of levels. It's the idea of energy can transfer. It can transfer from, potential to kinetic energy, blah, blah, blah. Or it could, and so that would serve as an advanced organizer. So they have something to, kind of link back their performance stuff into. Or is it better to, after they experience the phenomena, then they're ready, they have their cognitive footing so that now they're ready for the formalization afterwards. So we have 3 different conditions, and no support, and a before and an after condition.
Certainly some of the advice that I'm hearing, both from what you're saying and frankly from what I'm saying also, is that teachers need to philosophically frame their assessment activities in ways that are directly tied to giving them the feedback they need to provide, to improve student learning. And,
formative feedback.
Right, formative feedback. And do you have any more to say about that?
Yeah, the every other area is not just domain content, knowledge, and skills, but also really important, what are called, and I have to always do air quotes around it, 21st century skills. Some of the, when they're listed, one of which is near and dear to my heart, and one of my students is finishing his PhD in this right now, is creativity.
But these are of critical importance to everyone, always have been, always will be, and we haven't previously focused specifically on them. And one of the things that I'm so pleased about that's going on in Kansas is this has become a very explicit focus for Kansas educators and schools. I want to go back to something that you said before about sort of the use of formative feedback before instruction even begins, to use some kind of assessment, stealth or other, as a way to focus people, prepare them for what's going to come, be a cognitive framework for what comes on. I had discussions early in my looking at formative assessment. I had the opportunity to interact with Rick Stiggins a bunch, and he would tell the story of how he got into the area of formative assessment. And if I have this right, he had been a terrible student for his whole young life. Really thought he could not learn. And he wound up in the military, and he wound up in training courses. And in every training course, they first gave an exam and said, this is what the final exam is going to be just like. This is what you're going to have to be able to know and to do. And he used that to organize all of his learning throughout.
Advanced organizer, yeah.
Exactly. And I have always felt that to be very powerful. You need to, I think, keep it brief and to the point, but if you can develop a short little assessment, and again, I'll agree, especially for this purpose, not graded. There's no purpose for a grade,
yeah,
for a pretest before you're going to start instruction on a unit, but it can help students figure out what it is that they've got to pay attention to. Let's talk a little bit more about the further future. and where you see assessment going. Is it any different than what you've just been describing?
Yes, a little bit, because I'm just still at the baby steps, and I have all sorts of big visions for where this could, and I presented this in different places, the kind of far out vision and stuff. One is the equivalent of having, like a credit card, but it's got your entire history of your knowledge and skills and everything, on it. But one project that I'm working on, okay, so to frame this, so I think this stealth assessment idea is a good idea, and of course I'm biased, but it's not easy to accomplish. So the steps involve setting up a really good competency model. What are all the knowledge and skill bits, all the constituent elements that go into physics understanding, creativity, geometric sequences, whatever you're looking at. And then the evidence model. What does a person have to do in the environment to be able to demonstrate evidence about each one of these facets in this big competency model? And then the task model, building out the task, and then putting it all together. And then we've been using Bayesian networks for 10 years for the data accumulation. So people are doing stuff in the environment and things are being automatically scored. We've got all that part done perfect. I mean, we've been doing this forever. So we can score things automatically as a person is, and they're going, oh, person did that. That's an indicator of that. And they did that. So we can then score them automatically and then accumulate these over time. So the more evidences you have, the more reliable and the valid the claim is that you really don't know squat about this, or this thing really well, but you're having problems here. So diagnostically, it's a really good thing. This idea, it takes a long time to build up these things. So just to build up a competency model of something, I usually have one grad student go off and do a deep dive into, say, creativity for 6 months and do a full-on literature review and then a graphical representation, and then consult with experts in the area and get feedback. And then we've got a good competency model. That's step one. So with all this effort that's involved, wouldn't it be nice to have some competency models that were certified somehow? The vision is to have generalized competency models that can be used across many different platforms. So you're a teacher in Kansas and I'm a teacher in Florida, and we both want to measure our students in terms of their creativity skills. Well, hey, I've got a competency model for you that's been certified by the Competency Models of America or whatever. One final idea that I've been toying with, again, for several years is, so stealth assessment uses evidence-centered design, going back to Messick's work and, substantially built up by Bob Mislevy and Russell Allman. And this is very theoretical. The competency models and everything are very theoretically based. So, and the indicators are theoretically based. And these are all kind of a priori things. And we've been doing it. And then, we'll test drive the systems and we'll tweak our Bayes nets, depending on the data and stuff. But another idea, but it's very top down and theoretical. So I say creativity, and here's my model, and this is where it comes from, and here's all the literature that's associated with it and stuff. But another idea that's gaining some footing is more exploratory and bottom up, and that's educational data mining and machine learning kinds of stuff, which is very much kind of post-Hockeyan, where you're actually pulling out, oh, this indicator coupled with this one and a little bit of this one here are really good predictors of if somebody's going to quit a level or something like that. And the theoretical people are like, hey, I didn't think about that a priori, so another idea is the combination of a top-down approach, which is what we're using, with a bottom-up exploratory approach to build out the models, the theoretical models, as well as the Bayes nets, which are based on the theoretical models.
Yeah. Combining the two might make sense. I've been worried over the last, again, roughly a decade, that some of the folks, particularly on the commercial side, who try to get heavily into data mining, there was no theory underlying any of it. And guess what? It wound up not holding up and working. A lot of the
Yeah,
work that,
I've had these conversations before. So it does seem to be mutually beneficial.
well, I've loved talking to you, as I always do.
Let's do this every week. This is the most fun I've had in a Zoom.
And if we've excited any of the educators across the state who are going to be viewing this, who knows, maybe they'll want to come and visit when you give a talk. So we'll look forward to that in the post-COVID world that we're all looking
Yeah.
forward to.